I stood at the edge of our vineyard, watching the morning mist roll through the rows of dormant grapevines. December fog hung low over Napa Valley, turning everything gray and cold. The hills that Ellen loved so much were barely visible. In my hand, I held her favorite wine glass, the one with the small chip on the rim that she refused to replace because it came from our first harvest together. It was empty, just like the chair beside me, just like everything felt now. Yesterday, we held Ellen's memorial service in the main barn, the one we'd renovated ourselves 37 years ago when we bought this property. Back then, it was just 45 acres of overgrown land that nobody wanted. Ellen saw what it could become. She always did. The barn had been full of people, neighbors, wine club members, folks from the local Vintners Association. Miguel and his family were there, of course. Tom and Susan from the adjacent property. David, our lawyer and friend since 1985. But there were 2 chairs in the front row that remained conspicuously empty. Daniel and Catherine didn't come. My son called 3 hours before the service. "Dad, I'm so sorry, but I can't get away from this product launch. It's critical timing." My daughter texted, "Stuck in escrow on a major deal. Mom would understand. Business is business. Business is business." I looked down at those words on my phone screen and felt something inside me crack. Ellen spent the last 4 years dying from Parkinson's disease. I watched her go from the woman who could prune 300 vines in a day to someone who couldn't hold a fork. The tremors started subtle. She dropped a wine bottle during a tasting. We laughed it off. Then it got worse. The neurologist's diagnosis came on a Tuesday. I remember because we were supposed to attend a harvest celebration that night. We didn't go. We sat in the truck in the hospital parking lot and cried instead. The disease took her piece by piece. First her balance, then her ability to write. She loved writing, tasting notes, letters to wine club members, journal entries about each vintage. When her hands wouldn't cooperate anymore, she dictated to me. I became her hands. I learned to administer her medications, 8 different prescriptions, all with specific timing. I learned to help her dress when her fingers couldn't manage buttons. I learned to cut her food into small pieces when swallowing became difficult. I learned to understand her speech when the words came out slurred and slow, and when she could no longer walk, I carried her. Every single day for 18 months, I carried my wife from our bedroom to her chair by the window where she could watch the vineyard. Daniel visited twice in those 4 years. Catherine came 3 times. They were busy, they said. Daniel's company was going through funding rounds. Catherine was building her real estate empire. They had their own lives, their own families, their own priorities. I understood, or I tried to. Ellen made excuses for them. "They're just working hard, like we did," she'd say. But I saw the hurt in her eyes every time her phone didn't ring. The morning Ellen died, it was just the 2 of us. October 15th. Harvest was underway. You could hear the sound of picking crews in the distance. She was in bed, propped up on pillows, breathing labored despite the oxygen. I was holding her hand, telling her about the Cabernet grapes Miguel had just brought in. "Perfect bricks level," I said. "You were right about waiting those extra 5 days." She squeezed my hand, 3 small pulses. Our code. It meant "I love you." 2 minutes later, she was gone. Just like that. 4 years of slow decline, and in the end, it was peaceful. Quick, just her and me, like it had always been. I called Daniel first. He was in a meeting. His assistant took a message. I called Catherine. She texted back 2 hours later. "Oh my God, Dad, I'm showing a house. I'll call you back." Tom came over when I called him. He sat with me while I made the other calls, the hospice nurse, the funeral home, David. Miguel appeared at the door without being called. Somehow he knew. He hugged me without words and helped me with all the things that needed doing. The memorial service was beautiful. People shared stories about Ellen, her generosity, her passion for wine, her kindness. Miguel spoke about how she'd taught his daughters English and helped them with college applications. Tom talked about her volunteer work at the food bank. David remembered how she'd mentored young women in the wine industry. I stood up at the end and tried to speak, but I couldn't get words out. I just said, "She was the best person I ever knew." Then I sat down in that front row, between those two empty chairs, and wept. This morning, I woke in the chair beside Ellen's empty bed. I'd fallen asleep there, still in my suit from yesterday. The house was quiet. 42 years we'd lived here together. 42 years of wine harvests, late-night talks on the porch, arguments about which barrels to blend, laughter over dinner. Now it was just me and the silence. I made coffee Ellen's special blend from the local roaster. I poured 2 cups, like I had every morning for 4 decades. Then I realized what I'd done and started crying again. Old fool, crying over coffee cups. But that's grief. It hides in the smallest things. I was still sitting there, holding both cups, when I heard the car. The crunch of gravel on our long driveway. I looked at the clock. 8:47 a.m. Who visits before 9 o'clock the morning after a funeral? I walked to the window and felt my stomach drop. Daniel's Tesla, Catherine's Range Rover, both of them, arriving within 2 minutes of each other. They hadn't managed to come yesterday for their mother's memorial, but here they were, less than 18 hours later. I opened the door before they could knock. Daniel was in his tech uniform, expensive jeans, a cashmere sweater, designer sneakers that cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Catherine wore her real estate power suit, sharp, pressed, all business. They looked uncomfortable, like they'd coordinated their arrival but not their story. "Dad," Daniel started, "we need to talk." "Good morning to you too," I said. I didn't move from the doorway. "Can we come in?" Catherine asked. She at least had the grace to look embarrassed. I stepped aside. They entered the house they'd grown up in like strangers, looking around, assessing. I saw Catherine glance at the artwork Ellen had collected, the antique furniture we'd restored together. Daniel's eyes lingered on the wine racks, the cases of our reserve bottles. "Coffee?" I offered. "No, we're fine," Daniel said quickly. "Dad, we can't stay long. We both have to get back. But we needed to discuss. Arrangements. Arrangements." I repeated the word. "Your mother was cremated yesterday. Her ashes are in an urn on her dresser, in case you were wondering." They had the decency to flinch. "That's not what I meant," Daniel said. "I meant arrangements about all of this." He gestured vaguely around. "The property, the business, the winery. It's a lot for you to manage alone, Dad. And at your age, I'm 65, not 90. Of course, Catherine jumped in, her realtor voice activated. "But Dad, be realistic. This place is 45 acres. The vineyard operations, the wine production, the sales, the distribution. Mom handled so much of that. Without her." "Without her, what? You think I'm incapable?" "That's not what we're saying." Daniel leaned forward. "We're trying to help. Catherine and I have been talking. We have a solution that makes sense for everyone." Here it comes, I thought. I knew this was coming. Ellen knew too. "There's a development company that's been buying up vineyard properties in this area," Catherine said. "They're converting them to luxury estates. The offer they're making is incredible, Dad. We could get $12 million for this place. Maybe more." $12 million, I repeated. "Split 3 ways," Daniel said. $4 million each. Dad, you could retire anywhere, buy a condo in the city, travel, relax. You wouldn't have to work anymore. I like working. But you don't have to," Catherine pressed. "And honestly, without Mom, how are you going to maintain all of this? The vineyard needs constant attention. The equipment is aging. You'd need to hire more staff. It's not sustainable." "Miguel is still here." "Miguel is. He's a farmhand, Dad," Daniel said, and I heard the dismissiveness in his voice. "He's not a winemaker. He doesn't have the business acumen to run operations." I felt heat rising in my chest. Miguel had been with us for 25 years. He knew every vine on this property. He'd learned winemaking from Ellen herself. His daughters had grown up playing in these fields with my children, and Daniel called him a farmhand. "When's the last time either of you set foot in this vineyard?" I asked quietly. They exchanged glances. "That's not fair, Dad," Catherine said. "We have our own lives, our own careers." "Your mother died 4 years ago," I said. "Not yesterday. The woman who died yesterday was a shell of who she used to be. The real Ellen, The one who could laugh and dance and make wine. She started dying 4 years ago. You missed all of it. Do you know how many times you visited in those 4 years? Daniel, you came twice. Catherine, 3 times. 5 visits total in 4 years, while I watched your mother slowly disappear. We're busy, Dad. We're sorry, but we have responsibilities, Daniel started. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't tell me about responsibilities. You want to know about responsibility? I learned to work a feeding tube. I learned to change adult diapers. I learned to give injections. I slept in a chair for 18 months because I needed to hear if she stopped breathing. I carried her. I bathed her. I held her when she cried because she couldn't remember the word for wine. That's responsibility. The silence in the room was deafening. We're sorry, Catherine said softly. We should have been here more, we know that. But we can't change the past. What we can do is make sure you're taken care of now. The money from the sale would secure your future. And yours, I said. Let's be honest. You're not here because you're worried about me. You're here because you're counting your inheritance. That's harsh, Daniel said, but he didn't deny it. Your mother left a will, I told them. Of course, Catherine said. We assume she left everything to you. That's normal. But as your children, we're your heirs. Eventually, this will all pass to us anyway. So it makes sense to sell now, while the market is strong, and distribute the assets. You've got this all figured out. We've been practical, Daniel said. Someone has to be. I walked to the window, looked out at the vineyard. The fog was lifting. I could see Miguel in the distance, checking the trellises, preparing for winter pruning, doing the work, like he did every single day. David Chen is coming by this morning, I said. Our lawyer. Your mother asked him to read her will today. Why don't you both stay for that? David Chen? Catherine perked up. I know his firm. They handle high-value estates. That's good, Dad. Professional representation. He'll help us manage the sale and distribution properly. I turned back to them. This isn't about a sale. We'll see what the will says, Daniel said confidently. But standard estate law in California means that... I know what estate law says, I interrupted. Your mother knew too. She was very thorough. The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. I opened it to find David standing there with his briefcase. Behind him, Miguel approached from the vineyard, work gloves still on his hands. Morning, Robert, David said. I'm sorry it has to be today, but Ellen was specific about timing. Come in, I gestured to the living room. Daniel and Catherine are already here. David raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Miguel stopped at the door, uncertain. Come in, Miguel, I said. Please. Ellen wanted you here. Me? Miguel looked confused. But I am not family, Mr. Chen. Come in, I repeated. We all sat down, Daniel and Catherine on the couch, stiff and alert. Miguel perched nervously on the edge of a chair. I stood by the fireplace. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. This is Ellen Chen's last will and testament, he said formally. Dated January 15th of this year, witnessed and notarized. Ellen asked me to read it aloud to all beneficiaries. He looked at Daniel and Catherine. I'm glad you're both here. Let's hear it, Daniel said, ready to move forward with his plans. David began reading, the legal preamble about sound, mind, and body. Then, to my husband Robert Chen, I leave my complete and unconditional love, my gratitude for 42 years of partnership, and my blessing for whatever future he chooses. Robert already owns this house jointly with me. He has been the sole owner of Chen Vineyard LLC since we restructured the business 10 years ago. He needs nothing from my estate because he already has everything. Catherine frowned. Wait, what? David continued. To my son Daniel and my daughter Catherine, I leave my personal jewelry, my collection of first edition wine books, and the sum of $10,000 each. $10,000? Daniel stood up. That's it? Please sit down, David said calmly. There's more. He pulled out another document. This is a letter Ellen wrote. She asked me to read it after the will. He unfolded the paper and began, Daniel and Catherine, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. I hope you're sad. I hope you cried. But I doubt you came to my memorial service. I doubt you were there when I died, just like you weren't there for the 4 years before it. I know you were busy. I know you have important lives and successful careers. I understand. What you need to understand is that your absence spoke volumes about what matters to you. It wasn't me. It wasn't your father. It wasn't this place that gave you everything, your education, your start in life, your memories of childhood. What mattered to you was your own comfort, your own ambitions, your own priorities. Catherine's face had gone pale. Daniel sat frozen. The letter continued. I'm not writing this to be cruel. I'm writing this to be honest. Miguel Rodriguez has worked on this vineyard for 25 years. When I was diagnosed, he started coming in 2 hours early every day to help with tasks I could no longer do. When I couldn't walk the rows anymore, he'd bring me samples, and we'd taste together. He learned from me. He listened. He cared. His daughters visited me weekly. They read to me. They sang to me. They held my hand. They did the things my own children should have done but didn't. Miguel was crying quietly. I handed him a tissue. Therefore, the letter concluded, I'm leaving the following to Miguel Rodriguez and his family. My share of the Chen Winery Wine Club membership database and rights, my complete recipe and process documentation accumulated over 40 years, and 20% ownership in Chen Vineyard LLC, which Robert has agreed to transfer to Miguel upon my death. Miguel, you earned this, not through blood, but through loyalty, through kindness, through showing up. You're the son who stayed. Daniel and Catherine, you're the children who left. The math is simple. The room was silent, except for Miguel's quiet weeping. This is bullshit, Daniel finally exploded. She can't do that. We're her children. We have legal rights. Actually, you don't, David said calmly. Ellen owned nothing jointly with Robert except the house, which passes to him automatically. The LLC shares she gave Miguel came from her personal holdings, which she was free to distribute as she chose. The will is ironclad. I made sure of that. We'll contest it, Catherine said, but her voice was shaking. David pulled out another folder. Ellen anticipated that. This contains documentation of every request you made for money in the last 10 years. Every loan you asked for, every time you called asking for help with a down payment or an investment or a business expense. There are also dated records of every medical appointment Ellen had, every hospitalization, every significant decline in her health, and there are corresponding records of your visits, or lack thereof. 2 visits in 4 years, Daniel. 3 visits, Catherine. It's all documented, with dates, times, and witnesses. He pulled out more papers. This is a complete record of Miguel's hours worked, not just his regular shifts, but all the additional time he volunteered. Ellen kept a daily journal. Every day for 4 years, she wrote about who visited, who called, who cared. It makes for interesting reading. He looked at them. If you contest this will, all of this becomes public record in probate court. Every detail of your neglect, your requests for money, your broken promises to visit. Ellen also wrote that if either of you contest the will, your $10,000 bequest will be reduced to $1, $1 each. That's vindictive, Catherine whispered. That's consequence, I said. Your mother wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to teach you something you never learned. That family isn't about DNA or inheritance. It's about showing up. It's about being there when it's hard and inconvenient, and not glamorous. Miguel was family. You were visitors. Dad, Daniel turned to me. You can't agree with this. We're your children. You're adults who made choices, I said. I loved you. Your mother loved you. We gave you everything. But love isn't a one-way street. An inheritance isn't a right. It's a privilege you earn by being present. Catherine was crying now. We're sorry. We know we should have been here more. We'll do better. We'll visit more. It's too late for your mother, I said quietly. And I don't want visits out of guilt or obligation. I don't want you here because you're hoping I'll change my mind about inheritance. I want you to figure out what really matters in life before you end up old and alone, wondering why your own children don't visit you. Miguel stood up, still holding the tissue. Mr. Chen, I cannot accept this. It is too much. I am just your family, I said firmly. Ellen wanted this. I want this. You've earned it. 20% ownership means you'll help me run this place. We'll make wine together. We'll preserve what Ellen built. That's what she wanted. David gathered his papers. I'll file the will with the county this week. It should be a straightforward process. Miguel, please come by my office this week to sign the ownership transfer documents. Daniel, Catherine, if you have questions about your inheritance, call me. But I strongly advise against contesting. You'll spend more in legal fees than you'd ever recover, and you'll lose even the small bequest your mother left you. After David left, Daniel and Catherine sat there for a moment, looking shell-shocked. We should go, Catherine finally said. They stood, moved toward the door. At the threshold, Daniel turned back. Dad, I know you're angry, but we're still your children. Don't shut us out. I'm not shutting you out, I said. The door was always open. You're the ones who stopped walking through it. If you want a relationship with me now, you're welcome to build one. But it won't be based on money or inheritance or obligation. It'll be based on whether you actually want to be here. They left without another word. I watched their expensive cars drive away down the gravel driveway, kicking up dust. Miguel stood beside me. Mr. Chen, I still do not understand. Why would Mrs. Ellen do this for me? Because you loved her, I said simply. Not for what she could give you, just for who she was. That's rare, Miguel. That's everything. 3 weeks later, Daniel's lawyer called David. They were contesting the will. David called me to let me know. Are you surprised? He asked. No, I said. Ellen predicted it. She knew them better than they knew themselves. It won't go anywhere, David assured me. Ellen's documentation is thorough, but they'll try. They tried. The hearing was scheduled for February 3rd. I didn't sleep the night before. Not from worry, David had assured me the case was solid, but from sadness. This was what it had come to. My children, suing me over their mother's estate, fighting for money from the woman whose dying years they'd ignored. The courtroom was cold and impersonal. Daniel and Catherine sat with their lawyer, a sharp-suited woman from San Francisco who looked expensive. David sat beside me, calm and prepared. Miguel was there too, as a witness. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Morrison, reviewed the documents. She read Ellen's letter aloud in court. I watched Catherine cry as she heard her mother's words in the judge's voice. Daniel sat stone-faced, but I saw his jaw clench. Then she reviewed David's documentation, the records of visits, the journal entries, the contrast between Miguel's constant presence and my children's absence. I've been on the bench for 22 years, Judge Morrison said finally. I've seen a lot of will contests. Most of them are straightforward. Someone feels they didn't get their fair share. But this case is different. This case is about a mother who watched her children disappear when she needed them most. And it's about a woman who chose to reward loyalty and love over biological obligation. She looked at Daniel and Catherine. Your mother's will is entirely legal. She had the right to distribute her assets as she saw fit. More importantly, she had the right to acknowledge the people who were there for her. The documentation provided by Mr. Chen's attorney shows a pattern of neglect on your part and devotion on Mr. Rodriguez's part. I see no grounds for contest. Your Honor, Catherine's lawyer stood. My clients were building their careers, raising their own families. They had valid reasons for their limited availability. Everyone has reasons, Judge Morrison said sharply. That doesn't change the outcome. Case dismissed. The will stands as written. She banged her gavel. It was over in 20 minutes. Outside the courtroom, Catherine approached me. Dad, please, can we talk? Not today, I said. Maybe not for a while. We're your children, she said, and her voice broke. Then act like it, I said. Not because you want something from me, but because you genuinely want a relationship. When you're ready for that, really ready, call me. But don't call me about money. Don't call me about inheritance. Call me because you want to know how I'm doing. Because you want to share your life with me. Because you miss having a father. I walked away. Miguel drove me home. We didn't talk much during the drive. When we got back to the vineyard, He parked the truck, and we both just sat there for a moment. "Your wife was a remarkable woman," Miguel said finally. "She was," I agreed. "She saw people clearly. Sometimes that was a gift. Sometimes it was a curse. You think they will come back?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I hope so, but not for me. For themselves. They need to learn what Ellen tried to teach them. That money doesn't matter. That success doesn't matter. That the only thing that matters is the people you love and the time you spend with them." We got out of the truck. The vineyard stretched out before us, bare vines waiting for spring. Ellen had loved this view. She'd loved this life. And she'd loved me enough to protect what we'd built, to ensure it would continue with someone who understood its value. That evening, I sat in Ellen's chair by the window. I poured 2 glasses of our 2018 Cabernet, the last vintage she'd fully participated in making. I set 1 glass beside her urn. "We did it," I said to her. "They tried, but we did it. The vineyard is safe. Miguel will take care of it. Everything you worked for will continue." The house was quiet. Outside, I could see lights on in the barn where Miguel was working. In spring, we'd start planning the next vintage. We'd prune and train the vines. We'd prepare for harvest. Life would continue. I pulled out my phone and looked at it. No calls from Daniel or Catherine. Maybe there wouldn't be. Maybe they'd walk away for good, too proud or too hurt to try again. Or maybe, eventually, they'd understand. They'd realize what they'd lost, what they'd wasted. And maybe then they'd come back, not as heirs seeking inheritance, but as children seeking a father. I didn't know which would happen. Ellen probably didn't know either when she wrote that will. But she'd done what she thought was right. She'd been honest, she'd been fair, and she'd shown Miguel that loyalty and love matter more than blood. I raised my glass to the urn. "To you, Ellen Chen, winemaker, wife, teacher, the woman who saw clearly until the very end." I drank. The wine was perfect, complex, balanced, with a long finish, just like the life we'd built together. The next morning, I woke to find Miguel already in the vineyard, checking the irrigation system. I made coffee and walked out to join him. The January sun was breaking through the fog. The vines were dormant, but spring was coming. There would be bud break, then flowering, then the slow, patient work of growing another harvest. This vineyard had been Ellen's dream. She'd taken bare land and turned it into something beautiful and productive. She'd made wine that people loved. She'd built relationships with customers who became friends. She'd mentored young winemakers. She'd employed good people like Miguel and given them not just jobs, but purpose. And she'd been my partner in all of it. For 42 years, we'd worked side by side. We'd argued about blending decisions and laughed about mistakes. We'd celebrated great vintages and weathered difficult years. We'd built something that mattered. Daniel and Catherine had grown up here. They'd played in these fields. They'd helped with harvests as children, though they'd drifted away in their teenage years. They'd gone to college, started careers, moved to cities. They'd left this place behind, seeing it as their past rather than their future. I didn't blame them for that. People have to find their own paths. But Ellen had found it hard to forgive their absence when she needed them. Not because she wanted to punish them, but because she wanted them to understand. The most valuable things in life aren't money or status or career success. The most valuable things are presence, attention, care, showing up, being there, holding someone's hand when they're scared. Miguel understood that. He'd been there, day after day, year after year. Not because he expected reward, but because he cared. Because Ellen had been kind to him, had taught him, had treated him with respect and dignity. He'd returned that kindness by staying. 2 months later, on a Saturday afternoon, I was pruning vines with Miguel when I heard a car. I looked up to see Catherine's Range Rover. She got out, and to my surprise, her 2 daughters, my granddaughters, climbed out with her. Emily was 15, Grace was 12. I hadn't seen them in almost a year. Catherine walked toward me slowly. "Dad, I know you said not to come, but I needed to. Not to talk about the will or money, just to be here." The girls ran to me, hugging me. "Grandpa, Mom said we could help with the vineyard today if it's okay." I looked at Catherine. She had tears in her eyes. I told them about their grandmother, Really told them. About her illness, about how you took care of her, about everything. They wanted to come see where she lived, where you still live. You're welcome here, I said. You're always welcome. That day, Catherine and her daughters stayed until evening. The girls learned to prune vines under Miguel's patient instruction. Catherine and I walked the property, talking. Really talking, for the first time in years. She apologized. She cried. She admitted she'd been wrong, that she'd prioritized the wrong things, that she'd taken her parents for granted. I can't get that time back with Mom, she said. But I don't want to lose you too. Not like this. You haven't lost me, I said. I'm right here. Daniel's still angry, she admitted. He thinks Mom was cruel. He's not ready to talk. That's his choice, I said. I hope he comes around, but I can't force it. As they were leaving, Emily hugged me tight. Grandpa, can we come back next weekend? Anytime, I said. I watched them drive away, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly, because I wasn't sure what there was to forgive. People make mistakes. People get lost in their own lives. What mattered was whether they found their way back. Spring came. The vines budded. Miguel and I worked the vineyard together, teaching his sons some of the techniques Ellen had perfected. Catherine visited most weekends with her daughters. She learned to help with the wine club, handling customer relationships. She was good at it. She had her mother's warmth when she let herself show it. Daniel never called. I sent him a card on his birthday, wrote a brief message saying I loved him and the door was always open. He didn't respond. Catherine said he'd thrown himself into work, taken a bigger position at his company. I hoped he was happy. I hoped he found what he was looking for. But I suspected he wouldn't, not until he learned what Ellen tried to teach him. One evening in late summer, I was sitting on the porch with a glass of wine when Miguel joined me. The Cabernet is looking good this year, he said. Mrs. Ellen would be pleased. She would, I agreed. I still think of her every day, he said. I see her in the vineyard. I hear her voice telling me to wait another week before picking, to trust the grapes. Me too. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the vines. This was what Ellen had wanted. The vineyard continuing, the work continuing, the care and attention and love that made good wine continuing. She'd known that Daniel and Catherine weren't interested in this life. They never had been. They saw the vineyard as an asset, a financial opportunity. They didn't see it as a living thing that required devotion and patience and daily attention. Miguel saw it that way. He understood that you can't rush grapes, can't force quality, can't shortcut the process. You have to show up every day and do the work and trust that the results will come. That's true for wine. It's true for relationships, too. I don't know how the story ends. I'm 65 years old. I hope I have many years left. I hope Daniel eventually understands and comes back. I hope Catherine continues to build a real relationship with me, one based on genuine connection rather than obligation. I hope my granddaughters learn about their grandmother through this vineyard, through the work she loved, through the life she built here. But even if none of that happens, I know Ellen did the right thing. She was honest. She rewarded loyalty. She stood up for her values, and she protected what mattered most: this place, this work, this legacy. On my desk, I keep the letter she wrote to me privately, one that David gave me after the will was read. It says, "Robert, don't let them make you feel guilty. You gave them everything. We gave them everything. But we also showed them, through our own lives, what matters. They chose not to see it. That's not your failure. That's their journey. You take care of yourself. You take care of Miguel and his family. You take care of our vineyard. And you know, every day, that I loved you with everything I had until the very last breath. The circle is unbroken. Love, Ellen. The circle is unbroken. She meant our love. It didn't end with her death. It continues in this vineyard, in every grape we harvest, in every bottle we make. It continues in the relationships we built with people like Miguel, who understand what really matters. It continues in the legacy we leave behind. I am at peace with her decision. I am at peace with her choices. And I am grateful every single day that I had 42 years with a woman wise enough to see clearly, brave enough to act on her convictions, and loving enough to try to teach our children a lesson they needed to learn. Whether they learn it or not is up to them. I've done my part. Ellen did hers. The rest is in their hands. Tonight, I'll pour 2 glasses of wine again. I'll set one beside her urn. I'll toast to the woman who stood by me, who built this life with me, who loved me until her last heartbeat, and I'll be grateful for every moment we had. The vineyard stretches out in front of me, vines heavy with ripening grapes. In a few weeks, we'll harvest. Miguel and I will taste the grapes, check the sugar levels, decide the perfect moment to pick. We'll make another vintage. We'll continue the work Ellen loved. This is her legacy. Not money in a bank account, not property value on paper, but the work, the wine, the relationships, the care. This is what lasts. This is what matters. And I am honored to be the one who gets to continue it.